Hello, everyone. I am so glad that you are here. Welcome to the Healing Half. Have you ever met someone who lived through something so tragic and you weren't sure what to say? Have you wondered about how to ask questions about what happened but didn't know how to? And maybe you yourself have experienced awful loss and you were looking for ways to heal and to keep finding hope amidst all the pain. Well, I've got the show for you tonight, and we've got an amazing guest, Jennifer, with us to share her story. So if you haven't met me yet, welcome. My name is Mickey Spear. I am a musician, author, and talk show host of tonight's show. And if you check out in the comment box, you can get your free copy of my book that I wrote called My Heart Still Remembers. I prefer a paper copy, but it's absolutely free to everyone. And that was one of my many missions in life, is to get people the workbook so that they can process their grief. Because when I was 13, my mom passed away from cancer. And I spent the better part of a decade avoiding grieving at all cost. And tonight we've got such an amazing guest, and she embodies everything good in the world. And I'm so excited to have her on the show because she's got a lot of loss in her life too. So I wanted to preface with tonight's episode that we are going to be talking about a lot of loss. And I think this workbook is going to be a great resource for you. And on the Healing Half, we always like to do two things. We love to learn about how we can address our own wounds. And then very importantly as well, how can we help other people in situations that we can't necessarily relate to? And tonight I am welcoming a guest. I can't say enough about her. And I'll give you her intro in a second, but she's got such expertise on both. So stay tuned, take notes. And if you haven't signed up for my email list yet, be sure to do so, because I'm going to send you all the resources that we talked about, ways to get in touch with both Jennifer and myself, and so much more. So if you haven't yet, head to mickyspear.com and join my group. And then the last thing that I'll say is, for those of you who've been listening for a long time, first of all, I love you, and I'm so glad, and I'm so grateful for you. But the one thing is, you might notice the format might be a little different tonight. So we're going to have Jennifer come on first. Then as she tells her story, we're going to dedicate it to certain individuals, and I'll let her share her own story. And then lastly, we are going to end with a song that I wrote. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest. She is amazing. So Jennifer Bajanich, I am so sorry if I mispronounce your last name, Jennifer. Jennifer Bajanich is a clarity expert, interpreter of dreams, signs, and visions, and she helps people connect the dots of moments, memories, and experiences to gain clarity in their life and live the best version of themselves. Can I get an amen? Does that not sound awesome? She is a writer, speaker, teacher, dreamer, mentor, and she currently resides in Orono, Minnesota with her 3 dogs. So without any further ado, please welcome Jennifer. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you for the warm welcome, Mickey, and for asking me to be on the show tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the show tonight. Now, you've got a story that I hope nobody else can relate to. So I guess I'll kind of just turn the floor over to you and kind of just let you kind of start at the very beginning of maybe where were you right before you got, I presume, a phone call, and I'll just kind of let you pick up from there.
Well, my husband and I owned an old Lutheran church in Wisconsin that we had restored. It was actually just down the road from my family's farm. And I stopped by one day just to be neighborly and say hello. And that's how we met. Okay, and we ended up marrying in this church. We had restored it, did a lot of landscaping there. And 2 years after we were married, my nephew was all set to be married there. And it was the night before the wedding. And I love flowers. As you can probably see from the pictures, there's flowers everywhere. And I had made the floral arrangements for the wedding. And I left the church to go to the reception hall to deliver them. And I got a call. And it was my oldest sister saying, "You got to come home. The church is on fire." And I couldn't believe my ears. And my my oldest brother and another sister were there, and they're like, okay, we made a plan quick, and my brother drove me back. And this is in Western Wisconsin, beautiful rolling hills. And I'll never
Mm.
forget driving over the hill and seeing the flames coming out right above the door there. And there were already firemen there, police officers. My heart is racing just talking about it.
Take your time.
You know,
This
right
is
away.
a shame-free zone. So
right away, the officer came up to me and started asking me questions. You know, they had already known that somebody was possibly in the building. I had called on my way to the church and said, my husband's there. You know, I think he's sleeping. We used it as a home as well. Whenever we were in Wisconsin, we had family events there, Christmas Eve service. And so the officer was standing there asking me all these questions, trying to, you know, find out where he was and what could have caused the fire. In the meantime, I was just in shock. It was like I was on a movie set and it wasn't real. You know, the flames were like 40, 50 feet high, and I couldn't even get warm, you know. And all that went through my mind is I didn't get to say goodbye. You know, we didn't get to go on a honeymoon or have children together. It was everything that we didn't get to do was going through my mind. And, you know, especially that part, I get to say goodbye, because for me, that was something I had carried throughout my life, is I didn't get to say goodbye to my father. He died when I was 7, unexpectedly. And, you know, that's why I felt such a connection to you, Mickey, when we first talked. It's like, I know what it's like to lose a parent. And you mentioned in your introduction that you spent 10 years of your life avoiding grief. And I didn't realize that I had done that my whole life too. And, you know, when I was a child, people just didn't talk about grief like they do now. There weren't programs like yours. And that's why I feel like what you're doing is so important. And I really honor you and thank you for that. So, you know, the fire was unexpected, obviously. You know, that Blake was gone, my home was gone, this beautiful building, all the plans we had, all the future plans, and it really felt like life was over. And I just, you know, I was suddenly in the same position that my mom was, you know, a widow. And it really shook me to the core. And I remember I didn't feel like I had any desire to live. You know, if there are people watching this and felt like they were in that same position too, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And you know, grief comes in many, many forms. It could be the death of a spouse or a loved one. It could be the loss of a job. Right now, I feel like the whole world is grieving the loss of the way we knew life. Not being able to be around our loved ones. Maybe not being able to have that big wedding that you had planned, in so many ways. But it really was a journey of going from search and recovery, because every day I would go down to the site and I knew I had an insurance claim to file, and I was looking for my memories, and I was looking for Blake. As crazy as that may sound, you know, trying to connect in. And it really, at first, it was this journey of search and recovery.
Yeah.
But eventually it turned into a journey of search and discovery.
Wow. Well, oh my gosh, I've got about 5 trillion questions. So thank you so much for being willing to share, because I know so many of us have obviously not lost somebody in a fire or even a really tragic way. And I know part of that is there's a shock factor where it's just like, oh my gosh, this happened. Like my mom died of cancer, and that's sad, and it's very sad. But a lot of people die from cancer. And so it's like people would ask about it, but there wasn't this taboo, this thing around it. So one of the questions, as I was kind of digging through what I wanted to ask you, was people are obviously fascinated. I mean, you said flames 50 feet in the high. in the air. How did you find that balance of having, satisfying people's curiosity out of both interest and compassion, just wanting to know what happened, with
Mhm.
setting your boundaries and being like, you know what, I don't want to talk about this right now, and I've got to go grieve, and I've got so much else on my plate.
That's a really good question. I didn't look at Facebook for a week.
Okay.
Um, and I barely looked at it following the fire, but the day of the visitation, I woke up at like 3 a.m. and I remember the first thing I saw, a friend had posted this picture of this beautiful tree. And she said, "We're thinking of you." And
Mm,
the only comment I put on Facebook is, "My heart weeps and my lungs have lost their breath." And I walked around for days, months. I felt like I had a wound the size of a football field.
right.
And eventually, with time, it became a wound the size of a large pepperoni pizza. But it took a long time for that to heal. Yeah.
And
And
how did you oh, sorry, keep going.
oh, well, as far as setting boundaries, I'm so fortunate for the family that I have, the friends and neighbors. My sister took my phone for me, and she
Okay.
started fielding calls and text messages, and
Yeah. That's
that was
great to
a help
know.
because it I just was out of my mind, like, and I'm sure some of the things I did say to people was sounded crazy. I'm waking up in the middle of the night and I would text somebody and like, yeah.
No,
It just really throws everything out of whack, and you have to learn to recalibrate your life.
Mm, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that little tidbit. I know I talk about this all the time on the show. There's our target, right? There's our people on the outside. And as we get closer, we get closer. And then those 911 people, those people that you call in very real sense in your
Right,
story
right.
for tragedy. And I think the question is, what's appropriate for different tiers and what
Mhm,
helps
mhm.
at different tiers. And obviously, an acquaintance isn't going to walk up to you and be like, give me your phone for a week. And like, go away
Right,
from me.
right, right.
But it's good to know for those of us who are thinking, how can I care for my immediate center to limit, to be the goalie, to be the gatekeeper and
Mhm.
keep people from you. Thank you for sharing that. That's absolutely a tidbit I will store away. And I think your amazing testimony kind of leads us to the next stage, which is how did you go from a football field size weight, which I love that metaphor because I know exactly what you meant when you said, like, my lungs don't have any air. Yep,
Yeah.
I felt that. How did you go from football field to pepperoni pizza?
Um, well, you know, I am a person of faith,
Yeah.
and I watched my mother go through grief, and she
Yeah.
always felt and taught us that God has a plan and a
Mhm.
purpose and to keep going. And um, we'll share later that you asked me for a scripture passage, and we'll share that one later. That was a big one. Um, but like I said, every day after the fire, I would go down there 79 days straight. And I'd
Mm.
come back to my mom, sleep in my childhood bedroom, and I'd have like ashes under my nails and soot up my nose. And anybody who's ever been through a fire, you never forget that smell. And if I know some people are watching that's been through a fire, and they will tell you that's absolutely true.
Mm.
Um, so it was like a Sunday afternoon. It was 79 days after the fire. And I went back to my mom's house, and I'm laying on my bed, staring at the ceiling. And I had this vision. I saw, like, in my mind's eye, this purple piece of paper unfold. And it said, "Jennifer, you have to try." And so I got up off my bed. I found a little yellow sticky pad, and I wrote on there, "I am loved." And I stuck it on my mirror, and I kept going. "I am blessed. I receive." And I knew that even if I couldn't feel that love right at the moment, because I was still, I, after the fire, I was like, nobody can love me like Blake loved me, which is true to a certain extent. It's a unique relationship, but there's still so much love around us. And we have to be open to receiving it. So even if I couldn't feel it at the time, even if I couldn't say it, even if my environment didn't look like it, I was going to make that declaration and stick it on my mirror.
Oh my God.
And I'd see it every single day. And as I was writing those sticky notes, the last one I wrote, I thought of Job from the Bible, the guy that lost his wife, lost his kids, lost his sheep, then he got all these sores on his face. And what did he say? He said, "Blessed be the name of the Lord." And I thought, okay, God, you say I'm going to give you beauty for ashes.
Oh my God.
I got a lot of ashes here.
Oh my God.
So I got some great expectations.
Oh my God. I'm like crying because I just love talking with you so much. And I think you're hilarious. And I know exactly what you're talking about. Beauty from ashes, though. That takes a whole new meaning, huh? Holy cow.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So really starting in that place of love is key. Even if you don't feel it, put that sticky note on your mirror.
Okay. Is there anything, we talked earlier about like removing the phone from people that we on the outside could do to help a person get there? Is it as simple as saying, hey, go listen to Jennifer's interview and put a sticky note on your mirror? Is there anything else we could do that could help? I
would say pick up your own phone, send a text message, or send a Facebook picture or a messenger message. People did that for me. I have my college friends in Milwaukee. They were sending me cards every holiday and packages and little Wonder Woman, dolls, and, having people believing in you. It makes all the difference to know that you're still connected, because when you lose a spouse, it's this emptiness that I can't describe. And with any person you're close to in your life, but especially with your spouse, because that's such a unique relationship. Your heart is knitted together. And early on, I read a quote from Ingrid Croce. She was the widow of Jim Croce, the singer in the 70s, Bad Leroy Brown. And she wrote that when she would hear his songs on the radio, it was like she could feel his absence and his presence at the same time. I'm like, that's it. That's what I feel. Because, in my mind, I could be like, oh, Blake would say this or that. Yeah. But physically, he's not here. It's like this vacuum, and eventually you find your peace and you, like I said, you recalibrate, but it does take time. So reaching out and touching them, Sheryl Sandberg says in her book, she says, let them know, I am free Tuesday afternoon at 5, can I bring you dinner? Something specific, so they don't have to ask you for something. Because I had instances where people said, let me know if I can help. And then I called them up, and said, oh, can you come help me do this? And they're like, oh, no, I'm sorry. And it felt like one more rejection, one more time I'm left. So if you can do something specific, and journaling was huge for me, letting God know what I needed. I remember one day I was sitting at my desk and it was like I couldn't move. And I wrote in my journal, God, I need a hug. And within 10, 15 minutes, I got a text message from one of my sisters with the hug emoji. Oh. So, what I'm saying to everyone out there, you want to help somebody. If that person comes to your mind, pick up your phone right away. Do it, because that may be that little nudge of the Holy Spirit saying that person needs you. Yeah. You just never know. Yeah.
I loved everything you said. I'm going to go back through and make sure I take a bunch of notes. And I'm going to circle back to the journaling piece, because you are one of the most artistic people I've ever met. Can you tell us a little bit about how, whether it's journaling or your other art forms, I won't put words in your mouth, how art helped you heal as well?
Well, one of the things I discovered, I have to tell you a little story. About a year after the fire, I went to art therapy, and, I was still really suffering. My initial conversation, I was just pouring out the tears, and my therapist did diagnose me with PTSD. you know, when you stand in front of a fire and see your home burn down and know your loved ones in there, it's very, very traumatic. It's horrific. And she introduced me to art journaling. And before that, I had done a lot of journaling with poetry. And then I did art journals where it's a process. And, you know, if somebody wants to find out more, you know, they can connect with me later. But it really was a meditative experience. But I also found a lot of messages of hope coming through. So what I learned is you really need to find a way to honor your grief. And by that, I mean, whether it's writing, whether it's artwork, maybe it's gardening. For some people, it's music. Some people, it's running. You know, whatever that outlet is, it's really important to honor it. And like you said earlier, you know, you hadn't grieved your mother's loss. And through all this, through the therapy, through all the artwork and the journaling, I discovered once I had dealt with some of that grief from the fire and Blake, is that deep down in, I was still carrying that grief from my father's death.
Tell us a little bit more about that. Yeah, I want to learn more about that.
So my father died suddenly when I was 7. And, you know, for my mom, this was her second round of widowhood. Her first husband died when she was quite young. So I have 3 older siblings that were from her first marriage. And then my dad came along, she had my brother and me. And he died suddenly. And I have very, very few memories of him, mostly of him lying in bed sick. He had diabetes, but nobody thought, oh, he's going to die. And once I, you know, started working through some of that grief, it changed my perception of him. I could see him as the brilliant man that he was, talented, just kind, and just a really faithful, loving man. And that was really a gift to my heart. And, you know, I think there are parents out there wondering how they can help their children go through the loss of a parent. And really, I think checking in with them along the way. For me, it didn't really hit me until I went off to college. And that was a big life change. So I think that's, you know, helped to stir it up. But
you and me, sister, you and me.
Yeah. Yes, I remember, you know, being at a social engagement, and I found myself in the corner with 2 other kids that had lost their parents, and we're like all bawling, you know, but you know, it still took me years to deal with it because I didn't realize how much I carried that through my life. That fear of loss is huge. Yeah. So I think, you know, just checking in with your kids and you know, definitely there's camps for kids. The book that you put together is beautiful. Beautiful exercises in there that I think would be really helpful to your kids. My mom had contacted my father's siblings and some of his friends, and she made a cassette recording of stories about him, and tells you how old I am. But I really treasure that. Yeah.
I love
it. Wasn't like the disc, you know, tape. It was an actual cassette. So not that.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I know grief is cumulative. We say that so much on the show. And new chapters, like you said, high school ending, college starting. No surprise, you and I have such parallel in that situation where college is really where it started to come out. And I was like, why am I crying all the time? And so thank you so much for sharing that and for all the wisdom. I know I'm going to have to go back through and re-listen to all of that. But I know in addition to working through a lot of the grief, you know, having to rehash just that tidal wave, how did you and your mom connect now as 2 widows and simultaneously mother and daughter?
You know, it was interesting because now that I've gone through that experience, she's shared more of her journey with me, and, you know, some of the things people used to say to her that they just had no clue. Like,
let's hear them. I want to hear all of them.
Yeah. She said one guy had said, well, you know, maybe you could go get a job now to keep yourself occupied. And she had 3 small children, you know, ages 23 months to I think 8 or 9 years. So there's no comprehension, you know. And she said one time one of the kids threw something down the toilet, and she went to the hardware store and said, I need to have the plumber come out and fix the toilet. And the guy's like, why don't you just get the guy out in the field to go fix it? And she's like, there is no guy. Yeah. So, and, people do still say some insensitive things, but I try to give them grace, because you can't really know what it's like until you go through it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I know part of your passion is helping other people. So I wish we could talk for like 7 hours. So we're just gonna have to have you back on the show. So for everybody listening, make sure you're following, if you haven't yet, my page on Facebook, and make sure you head to my email list, because I want to make sure Jennifer's got so many amazing, fascinating things coming up, and I'm going to be promoting it on my page and on my email list. So if you like her, which I know I do, I'm sure you all do, you're going to want to be on that. So that way we can get every new thing that you're up to out to people. So do you mind kind of taking us down the path of, you've got this amazingly beautiful, tragic story of hope and loss, and now you're not just sitting there and kind of living your own life, but you want to help other people. Do you mind kind of walking us through what you do and who would be a good person to reach out to you?
Yeah. Let me share two ways. One is I am a volunteer leader of our local chapter of Modern Widows Club, and that is a wonderful organization. It's really important when you're going through grief to have community, to have tribe. And, with they meet once a month. The first time I walked in the door, it was just like a sigh of relief, because these women in the room understood, although their journey was unique, they still understood that this is a major life-changing event. And I have to say, some of my dearest friends I met through this organization. And I hope you post a link, I know you will, of Modern Widows Club, so people can check it out. And because of what's happened recently, they're doing a lot more virtual events. Yeah. So people can join from anywhere in the world. And there's a lot of resources for widows there. They do a lot of widow advocacy, like all around the world too. So it's a wonderful organization.
I will be sure to put the Modern Widows Club, all the information, in my follow-up email. And I put your personal information that people can get in touch with you in the comment section now. But I know you do some more. You do more than that. So what's part two?
So now, being on this journey, it really led me on this path to discovering, like I said, a search and discovery, to seeing what was really passionate deep down in my heart. And for me, it's always been helping people, but it's also like doing public speaking, helping people to grow, to find those sparks in their own heart, to live a bigger, brighter, beautiful life, because it is possible to come out of something so tragic and still have a lot of beauty in your life. And so I help people do that. And right now I do offer one-on-one clarity sessions. And I know for some people that are listening in, this may resonate with them. So if they're interested in more information, please reach out to me. My email is Jennifer@jenniferbachanich.com. And then I'm also on Instagram at Jennifer Bachanich. So, yes.
Oh my gosh. We are so blessed by you and your story and your passion. I know one of the things you told me that really has stuck with me since we got coffee last week was move 1% in love and move another 1% in your passion. And I just think so many of us, especially amidst the crazy happening right now and going into the holidays, it can't hurt. It can't hurt to have a grief book, but then sometimes talking with people like an amazing person like yourself is so helpful. So I am so grateful for you as we kind of wrap up our time together before we jump to my song. I know you mentioned healing through music, and I was like, oh yeah, that's me. So we're going to for sure have a song for you guys, but I wanted to share the photos of those that you've talked about tonight, so that way you can dedicate the episode. And for those of you who are brand new, I like to dedicate, if possible, every episode to somebody who has passed, even if we're not even talking about grief, because it's so important to remember we are all an accumulation of loving, amazing people who got us to where we are today, and some of them aren't here, and I don't want to forget about them. So Jennifer, do you mind explaining these photos a little bit and dedicating the episode before we get to our song?
Yes. On the left is a picture of myself and Blake at the Silver Moon New Year's Eve ball in Eau Claire. And that was really, really a fun event. And actually, his help at that event is kind of what got me to know him a little better. So that's him.
Oh.
And the picture on the right is my mother and my father. And as you can see, he's a tall guy. That's where I get my height from, my legacy from. So, yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing and for sharing their stories. Their legacy lives on through you. And I think that is such a blessing. So, you guys, I am now going to send off the show by singing one of my favorite songs of all time, See Me. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for being here. Or one more thing,
one more thing, just one more thing.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me be here, Mickey, and thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to share that Bible verse with you.
Yes, I'll pull it up. Give me
one
second. All right. You're good. We can still hear you.
One of my favorites. God is love, and he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in God, and God in him. And as I said before, it all begins with love. And, right after the fire, when I'm going through and digging through, trying to gather everything, I had several books there. And that's the first thing I saw. This page was laying right out on top of all the rubble. God is love, and he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in God, and God in him. So, we have a lot of people hurting right now. And if they can just take that scripture, put it on their mirror, and remember that God is love, and you are so loved.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mickey.
I really appreciate it. And I love that verse, you guys. I'll make sure I put that in my summary email as well. And for those of you who, if I haven't met before, welcome. I love to do music, and I write a lot about grief. And I love to share my songs about grief. And sometimes we have other musicians that I've kind of met along the way on the show too. So if you believe that music heals and can definitely help in ways that sometimes no other medium can, give me like a thumbs up or an amen or something in the comment section. And if you haven't yet, head to Spotify, follow me, and you can actually hear the song anytime you'd like. And it's also available for download on my website for free. I want to give as much as I can away for free because I know when I was grieving, I didn't know where to start. And sometimes a free thing that you're like, it's free, I might as well download it, is exactly what you need. So on my website, you can download this for free if you happen to not be on Spotify, because I know not everybody is. So this song is called See Me, and I just wanted to kind of end on this one because it fits Jennifer's story so well, where it's like we could get stuck there. We could get stuck in the tragedy and get stuck in the loss, or we can find hope and we can do everything in our power to keep going. And remember that because of God and our faith, we will see them again, not only in heaven, but I firmly believe as we kind of just look all around, their fingerprints are everywhere. So even though we are not with them anymore, we are absolutely not alone. So this is my song, See Me, and I hope you love it. I can see from here, your heart is shattered. Just to know it's because our love mattered. And that empty place at every table, I'd be there if I could, if I was able. And I know it's not the same, but I know you'll see me again. 'Cause when your tires hit the road, that's where you'll find me. And be sure to listen for me singing in the morning breeze. And you'll know I'm near with the first flowers of spring. No, it won't be long until you see me. And we're going to leave it at that for tonight, you guys. But if you'd like to hear the full song, be sure to head to mickeyspier.com. Get on the email list, get your free copy of My Heart Still Remembers, as well as be able to follow up with Jennifer and her amazing story and talents and gifts to the world too, you guys. It's a crazy season right now. We are going through a lot as a world, and holidays are coming up too. I feel the fall breeze in the air, and I know that's great in some ways. I'm so excited for the holidays. But at the same time, I know it's really hard. So this show has never been more important than as we start gearing up for holidays, whether it's for ourselves, because there's a lot of stuff we got to process. I know, because I don't do it very well, or at least I didn't used to. Now I force myself to because I know it's good for me. But also, there's someone probably in your life who's hurting this holiday season, and it's hard to know, what do I do? What do I say? Even if we've been through loss, I know I can still be awkward sometimes and not know it. And that's why I love the show, is we get to learn, we get to educate ourselves on how to help. So thank you so much for joining me tonight on The Healing Half. Feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Bye, everyone. Thank you for being here.